Alicia's second pregnancy was difficult. She was 3 months along when she discovered she was pregnant. Her father-in-law passed away. There were concerns about heart defects and blood clots. And finally, complications when doctors tried to turn the baby, who was breech.
Her heart rate was at 70, and then it was at 50, and then it was time to go. And I'd had all these nightmares about 2 weeks prior when I knew she wasn't turning and it was probably going to be a C-section. And every time it ended the same way, with them saying, "We're losing her." And I died on the table. I was so convinced I was having a boy the whole time, because the whole pregnancy felt different than with Megan. So I just thought I must have a lot of testosterone, you know, in my system. So in my dream, it was that I died and there was this motherless child, you know, and then my older daughter wouldn't have her mother, and, you know, it was horrifying. And, you know, living that every night or every few nights whenever I had it, it was terrible. I didn't want to tell my husband. I didn't want him to think that I was losing my mind. I didn't want to worry him unnecessarily, but I wasn't talking to anybody about it, and I just was getting more and more anxious.
Her daughter, Sarah, was born healthy, but it was traumatic for both Alicia and her husband.
I would wake up short of breath and in a cold sweat, and oh my God, the baby, something's wrong with the baby. And I realized, wait, she was born, she's okay. You know, I hurt like hell, but I was okay. And it was just, but I was starting to have flashbacks, and I continued to have those for 2 weeks afterwards. And they were many times while I was sleeping, sometimes in the middle of the day if I was doing something else. I was back on that table with that horrible feeling of dread, and I would shake, and you know, I felt like I couldn't breathe, felt like I was going to pass out, so having panic attacks.
In the hospital, Alicia was screened using the Edinburgh scale. Her answers indicated that she was depressed, and she was advised to speak to someone. She met with a therapist and began attending support group sessions.
I noticed even in the hospital, I wanted to hold her for a couple minutes to make sure she was okay, and then I was asking someone, "Do you want to hold her?" You know, trying to pass her off and put her back in her crib, let her rest for a little bit. I was just so exhausted from the surgery, and I was coming down with pneumonia at the time, but it wasn't caught until I got home. And then I was diagnosed, so I was dealing with that. So I thought, well, maybe I just feel so lethargic because of the pneumonia, and I just had major surgery. But I just didn't have any interest in spending time with her. I just wanted to sleep. I wanted to go to sleep for about 4 years and wake up when things were easier. And I just felt like the whole pregnancy I'd been exhausted. And now I'd had this experience too, and I felt even worse. And you know, I had a not quite 2-year-old begging for attention at home, and all the typical things that had to be done. And I just thought, I don't have time for her. You know, I don't have time for myself. I just want to check out and go somewhere and sleep for a while. And I just really wasn't interested. And my husband he's a wonderful husband. I mean, he was so nurturing to her, and to this day she's still daddy's little girl, you know, whereas Megan has always been like my little girl. So I guess it's good in that way that they each got what they needed from one of us, but I just wasn't able to give to her at that time, and I knew that that's not normal.
Alicia went to therapy once a week for several months, then dropped down to 2 times a month and continues to go once every 3 weeks. She also continues to see a psychiatrist because she is in the process of weaning off medication.
I wish I had known more about it, is to seek out counseling while I was still pregnant. But I wasn't sure what I was experiencing was depression. I thought it was grief, and how do you separate the two? You know, but I think a lot of that was tied into, yes, I had the grief from losing my father-in-law, but also these unresolved feelings of not feeling prepared for the pregnancy this time around, issues with being hurt, my husband's surgery. We had financial difficulties with that. There was a lot of stress that I wish I had begun dealing with earlier on. And I'd always heard of postpartum depression, but not a perinatal mood disorder. So I really didn't even consider treatment. I just thought, this is something I have to get through because I'm grieving, and it'll be better when the baby's born. When she turned 1, she really started to get more independent, and not that it's less work, because you're still doing the same amount of work because you have a young child to take care of, but it became more enjoyable for me to interact with her, I think. The worst of it was over. I was feeling so much better at that point, you know, I planned a big first birthday party for her that I would not have been able to plan a few months prior to that. And I had fun. I really had a great time at the party. And I thought, you know, like I was really proud, like this is my little girl and she's growing up, and you know, everybody loves her. And she and her sister get along well most of the time. And they fight sometimes, just like siblings do, but I'm a much better mom because of the therapy and because of the medication.